Welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is August 8th, 2023, and I am, of course, flying Ryan Gilchrist along with.
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
And today we're going to talk about the AFC North.
Of course,
Lots of fantasy options there.
yeah, a little bit better than when we were discussing either of the Souths. And some interesting news sort of trickled in that Kareem Hunt apparently was working out for the Saints.
Yep, it was reported he was going to sign, but then he's got a visit with the Colts next, so not official. Still some time for that to change. But Kareem Hunt looks like he's going to get onto a team here in the next probably week or so. Saints also signing Anthony Barr.
Think he's going to beat Dalvin Cook to getting signed?
Yeah, at this point I do. Marlon Mack was signed by the Cardinals. Marlon Mack is injured.
Yes, there's a name we all remember. I'm sure there was at least one team last year that we stashed Marlon Mack, hoping he would amount to something. Kind of never really.
Yeah, he ended up with I think it was Denver at the end of the year after Javonte, and you kind of hoped maybe he'd pop off, but he did not.
Yeah,
Big news for
that was a fab stash that sort of didn't quite pan out last year.
new. Big news for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're starting Baker Mayfield week 1 of the preseason. Kyle Trask will start game number 2.
I am so shocked. Not the better news was actually from the whole Hall of Fame ceremony. I mean, the biggest no shoot Sherlock news. Baker Mayfield's the first start. Duh. The better news this weekend, of course, with the whole Hall of Fame game and everything, and was Rondé Barber finally getting to the Yellow Jacket dinner and getting one. So long overdue. As a Buccaneer fan, I remember definitely had the most iconic play in Buccaneer history, hands down, bar none, of course, in the NFC Championship game. Picking off the soup guy, the guy who sold all the soup cans on Donovan McNabb, picked him off, took it in, which of course paved the way to the Buccaneers and Coach Chucky to go in and destroy Coach Chucky's former team that he was traded from the previous year, the greatness that was the Raiders, and absolutely destroyed them. I mean, didn't beat them, destroyed them, of course, in the Super Bowl. So, if Ronnie Barber hadn't done that play, that whole sequence of events might not have happened.
Yeah, one of the several greats to win in Darrelle Revis, Zach Thomas, Joe Thomas. Yeah, a lot of good players going to the Hall of Fame this year. We're not going to go into that too much.
Yeah, I know, but because I was just listening to the Rich Eisen show earlier today from yesterday, and it was just sort of an interesting moment that you have to be sort of in Rondé's shoes. That you're going to the Hall of Fame weekend, you're there, and it doesn't really hit, I think, until you get to that dinner, and it's sort of like a oh my god moment.
Oh yeah. And of course, big news outside of the world of American football, the U.S. women's national team out in the round of 16. Such a shame for a sport I know we all care deeply about, soccer, and especially the women's game.
Like the World's Cup when I forget who it was on whatever the heck the social media platform is now, because you're saying the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, like the artist formerly known as Prince, when he went over that symbol thing, that you're just like, okay, and now Twitter is X. You still call him tweets. We still call him Twitter whenever you listen to any kind of show, and the host still says Twitter, even though it's now X, and it's not tweets, even though they're so called tweets, because of course they spent so long building up the brand with the birds and everything, and now they're X's. But I don't even know where I was going with this, because just the whole thing with Twitter is just like, well, X or whatever the bleep it's called.
Whatever you call it, whether you call it Twitter, you call it X, I still call it a colossal waste of time. Anyways,
yeah, I was going somewhere with it. I just sort of
something about women's national soccer team losing.
Oh, somebody on whatever the heck. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very helpful co-host type person.
This tangent interrupted by another tangent.
No, there was somebody on whatever the heck the stupid social media website is now, put out to everybody that okay, we can now go back to pretending that we care about soccer in the World Cup for another 4 years, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Even though you have everyone going, I believe that we will win. I believe it's time to get back to baseball.
I believe I'll have a nap. I believe I'll take a nap.
I
Um,
or like when
yeah.
somebody was like, I think it was like women's soccer or whatever it was. They're like, aren't you going to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the match? And I'm like, no.
I am a very big fan of the San Jose Sharks. Their games start at 10:30 Eastern time. I do not stay up for that. I don't care about soccer. I don't care about any of the women playing. I have no interest in it at all. I'm not staying up till 1 in the morning to watch them lose on a penalty shootout goal review by a millimeter. I don't care. Um this is not my final thought, so I can rant on it now. I just don't care. And it's not because it's women, because if it was the men, I still wouldn't care. Or stay up till 1 in the morning to watch it. But it's after all the let's cause a stink, equal pay and all that, which is fair. They only bring in a quarter of what the men's tournament does, but equal pay for equal results is what it is now because they got knocked out right when the men normally do. So,
Yeah, do you think all
it's
this
fun.
crazy college football realignment is going to affect the how it feels to watch college football? Because up till now, it's pretty much been uh, a sort of a accepted thing that okay, if you lose one game, that's it, kaput, your season's over. But so now, does everything between all the crazy realignments, do they really mean anything? And of course, all the changes
Well,
to the college football playoffs, such as they are, which is still highly imperfect as it was. I mean, I don't know if you like the old system or this new system can use some more tweaks.
it is going to what is it, 8 or 12 teams? I think
I
this
think
year.
12. I think 12.
12 teams. I believe that's this year. If it's not this year, it's next. And we're quickly going to a 3 or 4 conference system. The Pac-12, if you do not know, is being decimated. Arizona, Utah, Colorado,
Is
Arizona State,
is
Oregon,
this
Washington, and 2 more. UCLA and USC leaving the conference, 4 to the Big 10, 4 to the Big 12. That leaves behind Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, and I think Colorado State is the
hmm,
fourth one that's just left behind,
do
looking
you
for the life raft to jump onto.
do you feel this trashes the traditions that we have come to know in the known universe, or is all this just a money move?
It's all money moves. I mean, the Pac-12 had the worst TV deal. It was with Apple. It was one of those where if people
Does
sign up in this
anybody
link, you can get
even
more money.
watch or know that Apple TV exists?
I
Because of
mean,
course,
it's out there. People have watched Ted Laszlo, so I know people have watched it. But the Pac-12 is a very, very regionalized network. USC plays a lot of games at 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast. So there's not, again, I just said I'm a huge San Jose Sharks fan. I'm not staying up till 10:30 puck drop to watch them when I have to be up
because
and
you
go to work
know
and do
that
my day
game
job.
can easily go to 2 freaking a.m. in the
Yeah. Yeah,
morning. It's
it can easily
hockey.
do it. So then you have college football, which the average nationally televised game lasts about 4 hours before overtime. So it's like I'm not watching it. So it's a highly regional network to begin with. Then they had the worst TV package. They had the soonest out date, which is the end of next year, I believe. So it was just everything's falling
Who,
apart. And then when you had Texas and Oklahoma bolt, the Big 12 had to do something. The Big 10 is just loading up on teams. So it's a
who
mess for the Pac 12.
Who had the worst year, do you think, so far? Apple TV or Bally Sports? Yeah.
Ooh, I would definitely say Bally.
Ooch.
But yeah, we'll see what happens with the rest of the Pac 12. You got to understand that's not going to stay a 4 team division. That's just not wise of them. It's not useful. You have teams that are in the ACC trying to, 7 of them have lawyers looking at their contract to trying to get out of their TV deal before the 2036 cutoff. So college realignment is not done. The ACC is either going to have to start reaching for teams like USF, Eastern Carolina, some of these more Connecticut, some of these more small name schools for the League of Football to try and bolster their numbers and hopefully maintain, or they're going to lose their Miami, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Virginia, those bigger name schools, they're going to bolt to the SEC and the Big 10 and the Big 12, and you're going to become to a three major power conference division system, and then the rest of them might just be in one weird hodgepodge kind of conference. You might have Washington State, Stanford, USF, Maryland, some of these like just all over the place. Hey, we need a home. Let's make a conference of our own and work for the best to have a fourth. But it's an interesting situation right now in college football. It's not something that if you're a fan of the Pac-12, big Pacific Coast person, you're probably not enjoying it right now because your conference is being decimated. But that's the way the college football right now. Money rules it all.
Speaking of changes in sports, baseball is definitely faster this year with the implementation of the pitching clock and the hitting clock. Is this a change you like, and should they keep it going forward?
I like it. I think
Same here.
they need to be they have to work the automatic ball rule when you're like just starting your windup, but you're just not quite there on zero. Because I know I went to a game and they called 3 balls on the Rays pitcher. I can't remember who was pitching that day because he had just started his windup at zero and he wasn't delivering the ball. It's like, give him another half second to a second. It's going to happen. So I think there's a little bit of tweaking to the rules, but I do like the rules in general to keep the pace of play going. I think that makes the game a lot more interesting. We'll see in the postseason how that works, because in the postseason, there was always that build between pitches. You hear the crowd start roaring. They all get to their feet. They all start cheering. And that moment of anticipation was really good and really heightened for everybody at home, in the stands, on the field, what's going to happen. And that may be taken away. We'll see in October. But I also think you can get to that level of anticipation in the time of the clock. It's not like they're giving you 4 seconds. They're still giving like 20 to 25 seconds. But I like the rules.
Yeah, it's like it's nice to actually. It's weird. I'm getting used to it because you sit down for a baseball game. You sort of expect, okay, well, I know what I'm doing from the next 5 hours. You sort of chill out, and now it's literally
2?
done in 2 or 3. I mean, you
Yeah.
you turn around, literally, you blink, it's the 7th inning.
Yeah, one of the best things about hockey is it's a 2.5-hour commitment with the possibility of a short overtime in the regular season. But okay, the game starts at 7:30. I'm probably going to be done with this by 10:15 at the
Postseason, it can
latest.
go on until 4 a.m.
Well, that's a different monster, and so can baseball. But knowing
True.
that, hey, the Rays game kicks off at 7, it's probably going to be done before 10. I can get a night's sleep and then wake up the next morning and not be groggy. It's kind of nice, and I do think it makes the game more entertaining. I think my biggest rule change that I like is the no shift rule. Oh, hey, this guy's really good at hitting to the right side, so let's put 5 defenders on that, so there's just nowhere for him to go. Make him go the other. It's like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could, but it ruins the game. Like, someone got really good at doing something a certain way, and then you just like, oh, we'll just make that not possible. Takes a lot of the skill away from the game, I think. But anyways, that covers a lot of our other non-football stuff that we don't normally
Shall
cover.
we, in the vein of Darkwing Duck, let's get not dangerous but divisional.
Let's get into the division. We're going to talk about the AFC North today.
A
Bengals.
slightly better division. Finally.
Yeah, the Bengals on top of the division last year. The Steelers, Ravens, and Browns trailing behind. The Bengals only 1 year removed from a Super Bowl appearance. Of course, they had the crazy game against Buffalo where DeMar Hamlin went down, then the revenge game in the playoffs.
Could I do a Sports Shuffle audible if you would do a fantasy realignment of either the Cleveland Browns or the Pittsburgh Steelers to the NFC South? Are both teams capable of winning the division?
I think, yeah. There's not many teams you can move to the NFC South where you go, they have no, like the Cardinals, no, they couldn't do it.
Rams.
I don't know if I buy that. I mean, we'll get to the NFC West later, and Cooper Kupp's going pick number 5. If you believe in Cooper Kupp that highly, you also believe in Matthew Stafford being better. We saw Cam Akers advance. That defense is not going to be great, but I think if you put him in a soft division like the South, they'd be just fine. I think the entire North and entire East can beat them. So the only team in the NFC that might not beat them is the Cardinals. Then you look at the AFC, it's Houston, the Colts, and maybe the Raiders. I think the Raiders could take it.
No,
Anybody in the AFC East, anybody in the AFC North.
Raiders are having fun because now it's two people, not only Josh Jacobs, because I think that they had another person who's holding in now, so they're having fun.
They also have a player who's banned from selling Pokemon cards. Oh, okay. Now we got a sidebar because I brought it up. Raiders player.
Is this the former player? Cards. Is this the former player or a current player?
I think it's a current player, Blake Martinez.
Because I saw. Yeah. Oh, this is the story. The dude who. No. I remember this because he ended up finding something insane like a $600,000 Pokemon card. I remember. I saw the story and it was like, holy shinoly.
Yeah, and it really wasn't what it was, but yeah.
So he's banned now from the
He can't sell Pokemon cards on the site, like whatever he was doing, because he, I guess, misrepresented something. I don't know.
Oops.
So Raiders football. We'll get to the West later this week.
We're really shuffling today. We're in definite shuffle mode.
Oh yeah. So we'll go with the AFC North again. The Bengals on top did go down against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, so a good run for them. Lot of good things to talk about here. We're going to start with the quarterback, Joe Burrow, who is going pick 34.8 in fantasy drafts.
Main question with Burrow has to be, how bad is this injury, whatever it is? Because you tend to have two basic schools of thought with this. You have the one school of thought that, it's something he can either work through, no problem, maybe miss a week, blah, 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 no biggie. Then another school of thought that you're having a teammate tell him, no, you need to wait as long as possible, even if it's to week 10, and somehow they'll slog on without him. So that puts a lot of definite enigmas for the Bengals, as once again they're trying to fight, I believe, for the third year in a row to try to win the crown of the division. And that's when the odds tend to start stacking against you.
Yep. Burrow is expected to miss several weeks with what is called a calf strain. However, if this was a regular season injury, I do think he would be back sooner than he is in the preseason. They're going to hold him out until he's fully healthy. As of now, don't expect a major issue for week 1 with Joe Burrow, but if you are concerned, he is going pick 34.8. Lamar Jackson going at pick 35.9. Fields and Herbert about a round later. You do have other options. He is not the end of a tier. He's actually pretty early. He might be the first one in that tier 2 set of quarterbacks behind Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts. So you have other options if you are concerned, but it doesn't sound like the injury is going to be a major problem. Joe Burrow last year was the quarterback number 4. The year before, he was the quarterback number 7. So he's got back-to-back years of very good production. I don't know if he's worth that late 3rd, early 4th round pick that he's going at now. He does not run the ball. There is the risk of that rushing upside that other quarterbacks have, putting them ahead of Joe Burrow. And then those touchdown passes are not necessarily something you can bank on. We saw Justin Herbert last year have a bad fantasy year. Now, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams being hurt, Justin Herbert being hurt with the chest injury he got early in the season, maybe that all played into it a little bit more than we'd like to admit, but touchdowns are not dependent. We saw Pat Mahomes go from, I think it was about a 40-plus touchdown season to somewhere in the low 30s the next year and then back into the 40s. So Joe Burrow, late 3rd, early 4th round pick on average. I don't know if I'm in at that price. I think it might be a little bit too high, especially with that calf strain injury being a risk, but he's got so many good weapons around him that he's going to fall into a lot more good games than bad games no matter what.
If anybody is taking Joe Burrow off of their draft board, is that a overreaction?
If you're going to take him off of your draft board in your own mind, it has to be because he doesn't run the ball and you think that there's negative regression coming to the touchdown numbers. You can go after Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields with that running upside and make that case that way. then you can take him off your board. But if you're going to say he might have a calf problem that lingers, I do think that's a mistake. If it's a guy you like, I know when I won the 16-teamer, I had Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon, we'll talk about shortly. They paved the way to the championship because they came up massive, and they're both very good players on a very good offense. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, we'll get to later as well. A lot of good options. So even if Joe Burrow is not as good as he was last year, he's still probably going to be a top 5, top 6 level quarterback. And it's a little early for me to take a guy who's not going to be a top 3 guy, but quarterbacks are being elevated this year. So I don't think you take him off the board just for the injury. If you have other reasons, rushing upside especially, I can't argue with you on that. It is a heavy price for that. So again, Joe Burrow, 34.8 on the ADP. Let's go to the running back, the aforementioned Joe Mixon. He is going at pick 40.7 right now. He is going at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Running back 16 off the board, middle of the 4th round. I will say this, in a lot of the drafts I'm in, if he is there in the 4th round, I don't really consider a whole lot of other options. He's going to be a 3-down back. There is no competition. He's going to be more involved in the passing game, but his efficiency did go down last year. He wasn't as good on the ground. He did have some injury concerns, so that's part of what's pushing him down. Not to mention, he did have the whole shooting episode that wasn't him, but his sister or something that kind of put a stink on him. We had the, is he going to get cut? He ends up reworking his deal with Cincinnati. So there was a lot of uncertainty around Joe Mixon that has pushed him down the draft board. And I think with Mixon, there might just be some name fatigue because he came into the league as a young player. He's been very, very noticeable and not always for the best ways. So Joe Mixon, pick 40.7, going a little after Kenneth Walker and Jahmyr Gibbs, a little bit before Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, and J.K. Dobbins. So there's some good talent around him, but 4th round for a guy who's going to be a 3-down back seems like a good value if you can get him.
The Joe Mixon's ADP in June was 50.51. Its July is 45.12 compared to with Alexander Madison, somebody who we mentioned last week. June ADP 73.57, up just a little bit to 69.11.
Yeah, so Mixon is rising. We'll see how much further up he goes. We only have about 2 weeks till draft. There is going to be some lag from the offseason news and people coming in and doing their drafts now. But as of right now, Joe Mixon is probably my favorite 4th round pick, especially if you need a running back in that window. There's plenty of good options in that 4th round, but a 3-down back is very rare in that position. But there is some risk. He was, the running back 12 last year. He did underperform on a very good team. He did have some injuries. So no P. Ryan behind him. We'll see what that means for his overall usage, but it can't really make it any worse than it was last year. And if he's healthy the full season, you're going to be happy with that return on the 4th round. Any thoughts on Mixon?
Ooh, yeah, if he happens to fall to you, you grab him.
Yeah. Don't reach. Don't have to pull him in the 2nd round this year. And if someone does, that's better for you in other ways. But if you can get him in the 4th round where he's going, I think your returns can be better than that. And then the wide receivers, the big one is Jamar Chase, average draft position of 3.4, number 3 off the board, number 2 wide receiver only behind Justin Jefferson. But depending on your draft and who likes who, he could go number 1 overall. I don't think there's anything to not like about Jamar Chase. He did have the hip injury last year, but recovered fine, was great. I don't think there's a negative word to say about Jamar Chase. If you have a top 5 pick and you have the opportunity to get him and you want him, he's going to return the value as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, that's another one, even more of a no-brainer than Joe Mixon. Jamar Chase falls to you, you boom, press the button.
And this is where that Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow stack, if you take him in the 1st round, you can take Burrow in that 3rd round and possibly have a really good quarterback wide receiver stack. It's a high investment play, but it could work out to be league or at least week winning several times throughout the year. The other one on this board is going to be T. Higgins, pick 29.7 is the average draft position. He is going about wide receiver 12, wide receiver 13 actually off the board. He's kind of like Jalen Waddle with Tyreek Hill. You can get him at a 2 or 3 round discount. So I think if you don't want to pay up for Jamar Chase, but you still want a piece of that Bengals receiving game, he is a good option in the third round. The obvious problem was some injury concerns last year. He didn't really miss any games per se, but he did leave games extremely early and really hurt you in those games where he got no production whatsoever. And unfortunately, that's going to happen from time to time, but he was the wide receiver 18. He is going the wide receiver 12, so he's going above where he finished. He's going above his best ever result. There is risk that he will not ascend to that top spot because his best games were when Jamar Chase was out injured, but still a lot of talent on a very high-powered offense.
Who would you choose, Higgins or Najee Harris?
You can get Higgins. Actually, you can get them. Let me see where they're at overall in sleeper. Where is? They're going back to back in sleeper. Pick 29.2 for Najee. Pick 29.7. I personally would go with Najee Harris, mostly because if I'm going to go wide receiver, I'd rather go Olave or take the shot on DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith. But it's going to be dependent on your team construction. If you go Jamar Chase, he's completely off the board for you in that third round. If you go wide receiver, you probably have to go running back. So in a vacuum, I think I'd rather have Najee Harris because Higgins is going to be very inconsistent. He's going to have some boom weeks and some bust weeks. He's going to be a more talented Mike Williams, essentially, with a better history on injury front. But I think I'd rather have Najee. I think Najee's going to ascend just a little bit. We'll get to him in a little bit. But I think Najee's going to be better than he was last year. I think that offense in Pittsburgh is getting better. And for my money, I'd rather bank on those every down type of running backs, especially this year when there's so few of them. If you can get him, you can get Chubb, who we'll talk about later. You can get a Henry, who we've talked about, who's going to just get all of the work. It's hard to argue against that. And then at tight end, I don't think there's anything major here. I know they signed, who was it? Was it Irv Smith Jr., I think it was? Not a factor in your fantasy drafts. That's all I'm going to say.
Definitely dart throw type material.
Yeah, I mean, he could be okay, but there's better options out there. And we move on to, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson was an MVP a few years back.
He got shown the money, Jackson.
Got shown the money, was an MVP a few years back, but has been dealing with some injury concerns late in the season the last couple of years. He is right now going quarterback 5, pick 35.9, just after Joe Burrow. The rushing upside makes him an absolute cheat code if he is on his game, but he has been inconsistent enough where you might balk at that late third, early fourth round draft capital price.
Yeah, consensus has him number 33 overall. Sleeper has him number 35.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge difference there, which means he's going where he should. But the injury concerns, the fact that this was a run-heavy team that really allowed him to use his legs, they're trying to go to a more pass-happy system. Lamar Jackson can absolutely throw the ball, but will that take away from his rushing opportunities? I don't know. There is another risk to this team, just the injury concern, not knowing what's going on with J.K. Dobbins, not knowing who the proper number one wide receiver is outside of Mark Andrews. There's some risk here. I think he can get it done with his legs. If he stays healthy, you're going to be happy with the pick. But there's been enough to at least give you some pause in that fourth round.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins' average current ADP right now is 501.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins, who we'll talk about here now, I guess. He's on the physically unable to perform list. He's going at pick 49.4 in sleeper ADP. Still dealing with a knee injury from about 1.5 to 2 years ago. That's pretty concerning at this point, but I think the expectation is he will be okay for the regular season, but only time will tell. I am completely out on J.K. Dobbins. This might be the first player I'm willing to say I don't want him. I don't think he's going to be very good.
Even though he is unquestionably one of the best pure runners in the NFL, you still don't feel all that confident.
I don't know if his knee's healthy. I don't know if he's in a good place. He's also fighting for a contract, so there's a lot of distraction. And this is a team that's going from a running game heavy to a passing game heavy style of offense. I think Dobbins might just end up on the wrong side of things. And yes, he's going at the running back 17, 18 kind of frame. But I'm looking at, who's around him. Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, who's going to miss 3 weeks, but you think is going to be really good outside of that. Miles Sanders, Damian Pierce, Cam Akers, Alexander Madison going about 12 picks later. James Conner going a little later than that. Like, I think all of those I would rather have over J.K. Dobbins. And that, when you are in a range in a draft, I'm going to be out on you because I like the other options around you. And that's just the running backs, not to mention who's going around him at the wide receiver spot where, you've got Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, George Kittle, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Drake London. You've got quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert and Justin Fields. And there's enough there where I just don't have the confidence in J.K. Dobbins. And frankly, I know how I like to build my teams, especially this year. We'll talk about draft strategy, where I think if you have 2 stud running backs to start your draft and then can fill in good wide receivers and just have serviceable backups behind those running backs, you're playing a risky game that they stay healthy, but you're going to be very powerful in other ways, and that might be the best way to go. That also takes J.K. Dobbins out of the plan because by the 4th round, you need those 2 running backs in place on that strategy. It's just a guy I'm out on for whatever reason. Any interest on your end, or
just sort of depending upon how the draft goes and how chancy I have to take it as far as the risk goes.
Well, the question I have for you is going to be basically this: J.K. Dobbins in a vacuum, J.K. Dobbins or Terry McLaurin?
I think I might actually go Dobbins.
Okay. Sanders?
Sanders or Dobbins?
Miles Sanders or Dobbins?
I guess I might actually go Sanders given his situation.
DJ Moore with the Bears.
DJ Moore or Dobbins?
Yep.
I might go Moore.
Yeah, see, and those are some people. Miles go after him. Damian Pierce, I don't know, I didn't ask you, but he's going a little after. DJ Moore's going after him. I think there's enough going right around that same range that he's just not someone that's appetizing with the knee injury, with the contract dispute. It's just too much baggage for me this year. He's a good player. I don't argue that at all, but I just think there's too much going on that
sort of
be
like
a distraction.
Sort of like a Josh Jacobs scenario.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Jacobs, great running back. Jonathan Taylor, same thing, great running back. But if they don't get their situations worked out, maybe more of a Jonathan Taylor because he got the ankle injury as well, with the ankle and the contract negotiation and problems. So with both of those, I'm not fully out on Jonathan Taylor, but it does have to come with a pretty solid discount and some assurance he's actually going to be back in camp soon to get some work.
You want to hear about actual practice on the field, not meeting in a luxury bus.
Yeah, I mean, he's away getting treatment on his ankle, is what they say. But I've heard that the relationship's defrosting a little bit, but only time will tell. We'll get to the wide receivers here for the Ravens in a second. But Mark Andrews is the number 1 passing threat, so we'll jump to him first. Pick number 26.6, early 3rd to mid 3rd round pick, depending on your league. Mark Andrews, if he stays healthy, is the only real person that can challenge Travis Kelce for the number 1 overall tight end spot. He's going 21 picks later, so I think the value of going Andrews over Kelce is massive. There will be someone in the 1st round that takes Travis Kelce in pretty much every style of league, but Mark Andrews is just so much more talented than the rest of the tight end field, not named Travis Kelce. And you're getting him at enough of a discount where I think if you're going for one of those top 2 tight ends, you target Mark Andrews, and you're going to have to get him in early 3rd. So then you don't have to, reach earlier for Kelce. You can go get a Jamar Chase. You can go get a Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Austin Eckler type because you're probably number 3 or number 4 overall. In that 3rd round, Mark Andrews could slot right in, give you one of the best players at the position for tight end, and you've already drafted one of the best players at either running back or wide receiver in the 1st round. Could be off to a very strong start in your drafts.
Because when you sort of think about Andrews and you're placing him in the same vein as Kelce, that's a pretty good place to be in if you're a tight end.
Yeah. When you're one of the only other people on the planet that's remotely on his level, it's a good thing. Now to the Ravens wide receivers. This is where it gets a little tricky for everybody because they have Zay Flowers, the rookie. They have Rashad Bateman on the pup list. They have Odell Beckham Jr. coming off a 1.5 years off with an ACL injury. None of them you're super confident in one way or the other. Let's start with Bateman. He was very good in his time last year, got hurt with a foot injury early, never came back. Still dealing with some of the fallout of that foot injury. Odell Beckham, pick 119.6, going the last of the three, possibly hanging it up after this year. He's got a lot of miles on those legs, a couple ACL injuries, so who knows what he actually has left. Rashad Bateman, pick 115. Then Zay Flowers at pick 104 has the most upside as a rookie, could just come onto the scene and take over, but this is a team that really hasn't had a proper great wide receiver in a while, and I don't know if they have one still.
Yeah, this is definitely should be considered a dart throw unless you're talking a deep team like a 16-team league. As when you're talking about somebody who averages in the 8th round and 90th selection overall, that's not one of those players you're leaping over the keyboard to grab.
Yeah. I don't think any of these guys are going to go undrafted, but I don't think any of them are going to be highly dependent on to start the season. And we'll move to the Pittsburgh Steelers next. Kenny Pickett, pick 183.6, going undrafted in most leagues, 16-team leagues, probably the only one you'll see him drafted in this year. The optimism is that he could take the next big step. His touchdown numbers were horrendous. He can really only improve on that. If he doesn't, he's not going to be this quarterback for much more than this season, if at all. So maybe a late round dart throw just to have on the back of your bench, but he's possibly going to be one of those early waiver wire streaming option quarterbacks.
I'm trying to figure out what it is some of the major media is seeing out of the Pittsburgh Steelers because I saw two hits. I saw Stephen A. and Rich Eisen both trying to proclaim the fact that the Steelers can take the division. I know it's a competitive division and you can definitely have a lot of arguing, but with what we saw out of Kenny Pickett last year and the fact that the main banner that the Steelers hung down was the fact that Mike Tomlin didn't go under 500 that season. That was their achievement last season.
That being said, they were 3-6 at one point and still got to 9-8. They finished the season very strong. They have a very good defense. They've got Deontay Johnson. They have George Pickens. They have Najee Harris. They have Pat Freiermuth. They have pretty good weapons around Kenny Pickett. If that offensive line's a little bit better, opens up more lanes for Najee Harris and protects Pickett better, Pickett takes that next step. This could be a team we're talking about winning this division and at least being very competitive. The AFC is loaded with good teams, though, so it's going to be tough for pretty much everybody. There is an argument to be made. I don't know if I buy it necessarily that Pittsburgh's going to win that division. I think Baltimore's going to be very good. I think Cincinnati's going to have some injury problems to take a big step back.
They also
but Pittsburgh should be in consideration.
Too.
What's that?
Cincinnati also lost a couple key players also.
I mean, they kept a lot of their big guys too, but I just think Pittsburgh can take the step forward, and if the other two teams right ahead of them take that step back, it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is definitely possible that Pittsburgh can take the next step. Kenny Pickett, again, could be a very popular streaming option if he takes that next step.
You wouldn't wager anything on the Steelers taking the division?
No, I don't think that's the bet. We'll do our predictions at the end. I don't think that's the bet I would make. It's going to be, I think the Bengals are just too much better than them right now. The Ravens are iffy. We'll talk about the Browns shortly, but I could see the Pittsburgh Steelers finishing second, having a good wild card performance and snake biting a team in the playoffs if Kenny Pickett takes the next step. Everybody else around them, there's enough talent there.
He just needs
he's just got to be it.
Needs to get some Captain America super serum in him. That's all, easy.
Well, if he could do that, he would definitely go drafted in every draft because that's just superhero fuel. All right, next up is Najee Harris going running back number 12, 29.2 ADP, so a mid-third round pick overall. Not a bad option in the third round. He's going around Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs at the running back position, so I think Najee's got the longest, best track record of any of those so far. He did have a plate in his shoe last year to start the season when he wasn't so good. They took the plate out, and all of a sudden it's like he could run a little bit better. So we did see him progress as the season went on. It's going to come down to this offensive line. They've been working to get it better. It's, I think, at least middle of the pack now, where it used to be one of the worst 5 offensive lines. So Najee could take a step forward, even with how bad he was last year. He was the running back 12 in standard leagues and the running back 14 in PPR. So getting him in the third round, if he's your running back number 2, he could be a very good asset for you. It's just a little risky because you don't know what that Pittsburgh offense is quite going to look like because Kenny Pickett's still a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah, you do have a revamped offensive line. Harris is going to get sheer volume alone makes him a definite pick if he falls to you when it is your turn. Just don't blink, don't think, bang. Harris, back end RB1 in fantasy, but still RB1 solid.
There's some good options around him though. Mark Andrews, who we just talked about, Jalen Hurts, a quarterback, Chris Olave, who I like a lot, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, DK Metcalf. So I think the third round is really a just nice, solid position where there's a lot of really good options that don't have a ton of risk, but a bell cow running back is tough to find. Najee Harris has a stranglehold on that job. He's going to get pretty much all of the work. So hard to go against him too much. Next up, we'll talk about the wide receivers. Deontay Johnson picks 77.8, so he's going 8th to 9th round in most drafts. No touchdowns last year at all. Was the wide receiver 30 in PPR, despite no touchdowns. Wide receiver 46 in standard leagues, but the year before that, wide receiver 8 in PPR, wide receivers 12 in standard. Again, Kenny Pickett is the key here. He takes a step forward. You got to expect some touchdown progression from where he was. 0 in his previous career low was 5. So Kenny Pickett's got to get some more touchdown passes. That is the big problem here. But 147 targets for Deontay Johnson. He did have only 882 yards and 86 catches. The quarterback gets better. Deontay Johnson gets better. He could be a sneaky great pick later in drafts.
Because everybody right now is looking at him, and when you tend to have a wide receiver who had a down 2022 season, you're probably looking past them. But if he is going to have a major return to WR2 value, he is going to be an excellent pick this year. So while some of your league mates may sleep on him, don't blink, don't think, press the button.
George Pickens, also with the Steelers, pick number 81 on the ADP, showed flashes last year, but was wildly inconsistent for the most part. I think it goes without saying. We're back to the Kenny Pickett discussion. Wide receiver 31 in standard was George Pickens, 39 in PPR. Again, we need some better play out of Pickett. 84 targets for Pickens, 801 yards on 52 catches, but those 4 touchdowns. Had a decent rookie season. If Pickens and Pickett can take that step forward, both of them, this could be another late round steal. I think I put my chips on Deontay Johnson just because we've seen him do it before, PPR especially. Maybe Pickens is the better standard play, but Deontay Johnson's the better PPR play. Both these guys have a lot of upside. You're not paying a lot for them, but again, both 8th to 9th round picks. So good options here if you want to go that route.
Right now, he's second or third in line for targets in the Steelers' offense, and right now the outlook is suggesting WR4 with possible greater use in the best ball format right now. But hey, if you're in a deep league, take a dart throw.
Yeah, he's not going to be bad for you. He just might not be a wide receiver 1 or 2 this year, but he's a very good talented player. Last on the Steelers we're going to talk about is Pat Freiermuth. He is going pick 92.6, the tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, going tight end 9 off the board. He is one of the people, if I don't go for Kelsey or Andrews, he's someone I'm going to target later in draft with Njoku, Chigakonkwo, and then after that, it becomes pretty much pure dart throw. So Ingram, Freiermuth, Waller, a little bit better on the value side of things, got it than those top 5, but Pat Freiermuth has a proven track record, even though it's been a short career. Tight end 8 in PPR last year, 11 in standard, and the year before that was 14 and 13 respectively. So he was still pretty good in his rookie year. He is ascending, and again, only 2 touchdowns. He had 7 the year before. He goes back to those 7 touchdowns. That point total, which is only 4-5 points from what it was his rookie year, will go up, and he will vastly outproduce his best season of all time, and he'll be worth that late round flyer.
He posted excellent numbers last year in regards to his targets, and based on his 2022 numbers, he might be one of the better fantasy values right now going into this year, especially with how we know how volatile the tight end position can be.
Yep, wide receiver 3, Allen Robinson. Don't draft him. End of analysis on that one.
So,
Uh,
so, so what's his ADP? Or yeah,
oh, well, I guess it's worth bringing up since I did bring up Allen Robinson.
yeah, I
Allen
think.
Robinson, pick. I want you to take a guess what his ADP is.
Does it begin with a 3 or a 4?
It's not quite that high. It's pick
Uh,
267.9,
would
which
that
is
be
still not good.
a Homer Simpson? I have no idea who that is.
He's very bad. Last up, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson, quarterback number 10 off the board, pick 87 overall. We didn't see the best of Deshaun Watson last year. He did have 700 days off between the last game with the Texans and his first game with the Cleveland Browns. So I think we can throw those 5 games kind of the
he
wayside.
he
Don't
he
make
had
your judgment on those 5 games.
he had some things, some stuff going on. Yeah,
Yeah, he did have
20,
some things, had some issues.
26 allegations, I believe. No, but wasn't it up to 32?
26. I think it was
I thought it was
26.
up. I thought it was up to 32, or
Oh,
those were the missed it. That
you
was
lose count.
insane.
However, in terms of the NFL, he has served his time for this punishment. He's not being charged criminally. For fantasy football, 9th-round pick, has a track record in the past of having very good fantasy performances. I know his off the field is
Hmm.
dicey, shaky, not good,
Sketchy,
kind of
creepy.
repulsive depending on who you talk to. But as far as the fantasy football player, he's got value. Any interest in that late round?
Yeah, definitely late because you're talking a consensus overall number 82, sleeper 87. So number 9 falling, going number 9 for quarterbacks. It's just a question is can you believe a Cleveland Browns team that some weeks can absolutely shock you? You're going, wait, how the hell did they win? And then other weeks they're true to form, going, yep, okay, that's the Browns we know and love pretty much. As I just still remember that game against the Bucks when they came in, and I'm still trying to figure out how the Bucks flipping lost that flipping game, but that still pisses me off. Anywho, it's just with Deshaun Watson, the main question you're asking yourself if you are going to draft him is, did he was he able to take the next step? Was he able to get to tune everything out, concentrate on football now, not have to worry about it, people up in the glass luxury boxes that the lawyers invited in specifically to make him feel just a little bit uncomfortable, even though he did the majority of that on his own. But still, nevertheless, the main thing is, has he gotten past all of the off of the field insanity, mostly that he himself created, but still, nevertheless, and is he ready finally to focus on the football? We'll see within the first 2 games easily. We may see in the preseason. I think he definitely has some weapons around him. Stefanski is definitely still, I think, a coach that if he doesn't watch himself, he could find himself very quickly on the hot seat. So, yeah, I don't know. Very, very risky. But I don't know. Who would you take Deshaun Watson over and say a Baker Mayfield?
Easily. Yeah,
Yeah,
Baker Mayfield's not in consideration.
so
He's
that's a
competing with Kyle Trask. Baker Mayfield's not on the table.
so that's called a don't blink, don't think. So that's just the whole thing. Is kind of when it comes to Deshaun Watson, is kind of your personal gut feelings, what you feel about him. You kind of if you're going to pull the plug and do the deed and draft him, you have to take all of those emotions that you have and kind of turn them off, become a Vulcan, and just total logic. Okay, I'll draft him because I think he's going to be a good football player. That's the best piece of advice I think to have with Deshaun Watson because he tends to invoke a lot of emotions, I think, just because of as a fan, just because of everything that happened.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson is not going to be on your fantasy humanitarian of the year roster, but for fantasy football, you need to be able to compartmentalize. Okay, this guy's a pile of trash, but he's also good at football. If you're playing in a morality league, do not draft Deshaun Watson. But for the most part, we're playing fantasy, and
Are there fantasy morality leagues? How do
I
you
mean,
score that?
maybe it comes down to like who gets the Walter Payton Man of the Year and all that. I don't know, but it's not going to be Deshaun Watson. But if you want a quarterback with a potential huge amount of upside, with a training camp practice and some games under his belt from last year and proper offseason to get in the fold, Deshaun Watson's got some potential. So I think he's worth at least considering. I know there's going to be people that just rule him out based on what he was alleged to have done. We'll see how it goes. That's the long and the short of it. Is we don't really know what he's going to look like. He looked bad last year. If he comes back and he's better, people are going to regret not drafting him. And just like a lot of things, if you're good, all of a sudden all those issues of the past seem to be a lot less meaningful and they disappear into the background. So keep that in mind when if he balls out the first 5 weeks of the season, all of a sudden he's the hot waiver wire pickup. People are bidding half their fab on him because he's just been very good. All right. Next up is Nick Chubb going running back number 6, pick 13.9 overall. That's going to be an early second round pick for a guy who is going to lead the backfield. That's the one thing we can talk about most of these backfields is Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris at least. All are going to be the true number 1 running back. No real threat to them behind them. J.K. Dobbins not quite in that situation. Nick Chubb now no Kareem Hunt. He's going to get a lot more passing work. He's going to be just as good as he was on the ground, if not a little bit better. And now he's going to have more involvement in the passing game. Early second round, I think Nick Chubb is a steal.
Yeah, anytime you have a player who has rushed for over 1,200 yards twice, I mean, just once again, don't blink, don't think. Press dead button and draft the dude.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, he could be one of those guys at the end of the year. You're looking at wide running back number 1 overall, one of the top 5 options in all of fantasy football in general. Second round pick. He's just screaming to be a good value. If you go wide receiver and Nick Chubb at the turn, I mean, that's not a bad way to go.
Yeah, last year, from I think talking about consistency, he finished as an RB1 47% of his games and 71% of his games in 2022 as a RB2 or higher. That's called press the button.
And that was on a not great team. So you got to think this offense does progress. Deshaun Watson is better. That's going to help everybody in this offense, including Nick Chubb, find more opportunity and find more room to roam. So could be a big year. I like him in that early second round window. Of course, how you like to draft does matter. There are a lot of people this year. They're going to go wide receiver heavy early. There's going to be running back heavy teams that end up with 2 very good options because they go running back when everybody else is going wide receiver heavy. So I think he's going to be someone at running back 6 off the board might be a little underdrafted, a little undervalued right now.
Everyone's going for CMC or Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase.
Which at the top of the draft you should do, but once you get to pick 7, pick 8, and you're going, okay, am I looking at Jonathan Taylor or am I looking at Stephon Diggs? Or am I like you have that break after Kupp, Hill, Jefferson, Chase at wide receiver, throw in Kelsey, throw in Eckler and CMC, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's not as good to me. I mean, Bijan Robinson never taken a snap in the NFL. Saquon Barkley with all the contractual issues and injury history. Stephon Diggs, all his drama in the offseason. Jonathan Taylor, you don't know what's going on with his contract and his ankle injury in theory. A.J. Brown, great player. Then Nick Chubb at 13. CeeDee Lamb, Pat Mahomes, Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry, all very solid. I kind of like Chubb at number 8 for me off this big board. And I could make the argument if I know it's going to be a wide receiver heavy league, as Joel disappears, I know if it's going to be a wide receiver heavy draft, I might err in the way of draft more running backs and just have that be a deep position. There's plenty of running backs you can go or wide receivers you can get later. and you can make them part of your roster. So, yeah, I kind of like Nick Chubb at number 8, personally.
So you're definitely a chubba chubba woo woo.
Yeah, if I can get Chubb, I'm going to be pretty happy. Now in dynasty leagues, it might be time to sell this year if you're not in contention because he is getting a little older and things are going to start to wind down. All right, let's go to the wide receiver. The big one is Amari Cooper, pick 41.5. He's going in that 4th, 5th round window, and he was the wide receiver 10 last year, I believe, in PPR, number 8 in standard. He was a revelation. He was very good. Had one of his best seasons in his career. And that was with Jacoby Brissett and a not up to par Deshaun Watson. So Amari Cooper was someone I was out on this year. Might not be that way this year. He's going to be 30 soon, so he's cresting the peak of his career if he's not starting to go on the backside, but I think he's still got a lot left in him.
Yeah, right now, while you're definitely should feel confident if you're drafting Cooper, especially after he definitely had some surprises last year, don't expect him to have a top 12 finish in 2023.
He could. It's going to come down to Watson. And that's where the uncertainty with this team is going to lie is if Watson does not go back to what he was in Houston, this could be an absolute disaster. But if he does, guys like Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, and Elijah Moore and David Njoku, we'll get to shortly, could be great. Elijah Moore was traded for a 2nd round pick from the Jets, early 2nd round pick, so he will be involved. They paid enough draft capital to get him involved in this offense. Pick 111.6. As far as a dart throw goes, I do like this option. Again, I'm banking on Deshaun Watson getting a little bit better, but getting him in the Cortland Sutton, Jameson Williams, Rashad Bateman, Alan Lazard, Adam Thielen, Jacoby Myers type of range, Odell Beckham Jr., I got to be honest. I think I'd rather take the upside of Moore. He's shown that he's talented. He just had, I don't know, Zach Wilson throwing him the ball in an offensive scheme that didn't fit him, and the coaching staff got tired of him in New York. Now, if he is a toxic personality off the field, I couldn't tell you, but I think he's a good dart throw. Throughout the 13th round. And last but not least, David Njoku. Pick number 95.1, going off as the tight end number 10. He had some burst games where he was an absolute monster last year, but tight ends are very inconsistent. I think he's a good option. Again, if you punt on the position, you don't go after your Kelsey and Andrews early. I don't think Hawkins and Kittle Pitts are worth the investment where they're going. Then after that, I think there's a lot of guys you can go after. I think Njoku's a fine target.
Yeah, because especially with tight ends, it's a the Browns don't exactly inspire confidence, but they could prove to be a very competitive team. Talking 9th round, 97th overall selection. Yeah, not bad, especially when you have so many tight ends out there that don't produce. So definitely worth a pick.
Yeah, once you get past really Kelsey and Andrews, the tight end position is kind of a dump. So you just take what best available as late as you can, is my opinion. So, anyways, let's do our prediction, Joe.
Uh, Not sure if we're going to agree or disagree, but
I don't think we are.
I'm going to take a crazy, crazy leap of faith and say that the Burrow injury is more pronounced than everyone believes it will be. And I'll see if this is a good bold prediction or if it turns into a freezing cold take in a few weeks. But I'm going to say that because of that injury, I'm moving the Baltimore Ravens to the top, and they will become the division winners for the AFC North this year. Lamar Jackson is ready. He had the Brinks trap backed up. Not only that, he made his case by recruiting Odell Beckham and stealing him away from the Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. I really think, well, I don't know how much that's going to help or not, depending upon what his whole mood and if he's ready for the year. We shall see. But I just have this feeling about the Ravens as number one and the winners. Number two, I still think the Bengals are dangerous, even with a potentially hobbled Burrow. They still have all of the weapons you mentioned, like T. Higgins, like Jamar Chase, like Mixon. They're ready. And I just think that third year in a row, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, the odds are stacked against them. They're going to still have a shot at being in the wild card as a wild card playoff contender, but not as a divisional contender. Number three. I know I mentioned it earlier. You have major media personalities such as Stephen A. and Rich Eisen really trying to hype the Steelers. And as you said, could Kenny Pickett take the next step, which would be important to the Steelers' progression and evolution as a football team? I'm not buying it as much as you seem to be or as they seem to be. So I'm going to put the Steelers right in the number three slot. Sorry, Coach Tomlin. I know you had a hell of a season coming back from how you started last year. I just tend to think things will start to average out just a little bit, kind of like how it works in baseball. And of course, that leaves bottom feeder team, the Cleveland Browns, as I just don't see a resurgence for Deshaun Watson, or at least one that's going to all of a sudden propel them to either second place, potentially wild card, depending upon how the entire conference works out, or even third place. I think they're going to be dead last. And when the season is all said and done, Kevin Stefanski will find himself on the hot seat. I don't know if Mike Tomlin will find him on the hot seat. He has so much of a history with the
Pittsburgh
Steelers.
doesn't change
And
their
yeah,
coaches at all, so I don't think
they,
he's at any
yeah,
risk at all.
I think you'll have the heat death of the universe first.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Baltimore Ravens as a surprise to take the divisions. Bengals second, third, Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm really not buying their leap into power, and Cleveland Browns right where they belong as number fourth.
All right. We do disagree fairly heavily in some places. So I'm going to take number one. I think it's still Cincinnati's division to lose. I don't think the Burrow injury is going to be a major thing. And even if it is, he misses a little bit of time. I think they're good enough to get past some of the teams they're going to play. At number two, I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns. I do think Deshaun Watson gets back to his form at least some point early enough in the season. I will say I think this is a division winner makes the playoff and nobody else kind of division.
Glad I
But I
wasn't
think the
drinking when you
Browns
made that prediction.
water. I just think that this is a division that there is enough uncertainty in some places that they can get it together. Chubb can go off, Cooper can go off. This defense is not bad. If Deshaun Watson does go back to what he was in Houston, he got the Houston Texans to AFC Championship games. You tell me you can't get Cleveland to a 9-8 second place title record? Now, we'll talk Baltimore in a little bit. There's a reason I'm not picking them here. I'm not picking them in third either. I'm taking Pittsburgh number 3 because I do think Kenny Pickett's going to take that next step. And frankly, I just have the sneaking suspicion that this Todd Monken offense for Baltimore is not going to work out. There's going to be some injuries, and this team is going to be behind the 8 ball in that
I think
respect.
Baltimore is going to fall flat on their face.
I think Baltimore comes in last place. I do think it's maybe a la what the Tennessee Titans did last year. They start good, and then injuries start to pile up, and they fall apart. But you've already got J.K. Dobbins, your number one running back, on the shelf. You've got Bateman on the shelf. You've got Beckham considering retirement because he's just not fully healthy. Even when he was with the Rams and he looked good, he was still only averaging like 3 catches and 40 yards a game. It's not like he was killing it. We don't know what Zay Jones is going to be. Mark Andrews has a little bit of an injury history. Lamar Jackson has a little bit of an injury history.
Are the reason for you putting them totally, completely.
I think this is a team that if they can stay healthy, will compete with the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think they beat them outright.
But that's the big question.
I think that's a huge if. And frankly, the last few years, they haven't shown the ability to get past the good teams.
I can't argue
like Buffalo, Miami, Cincinnati, Kansas City. They're not beating those teams. Jacksonville is going to come up and bite them this year, I think, as well, if and when they play. And I just think that Baltimore is I think it's going to be a snake-bitten year. I can't shake the feeling. I'm not high on really any of their assets outside of Lamar Jackson until he gets hurt. But every time I've had him, he's blown up in my face. So I just have the sneaking suspicion that Cincinnati is going to stay where they are. Cleveland and Pittsburgh are going to advance. And there's going to be some bad luck for Baltimore this year. And it's a feeling. I could be completely wrong. I'm fine with being completely wrong. It wouldn't be the first or the last time with sports predictions. We were way off. If you look at the board behind us, Joel with 100 losses, I had 99. We are not perfect on these predictions at all, but it's just one of those things where it's a very tight division. If Pickett and Watson take the next step, I mean, any of these teams can finish first or last. It's just, I know the smart money is to go against Cleveland and against Pittsburgh with the quarterback situations in a little more murky. I just have a funny feeling that Lamar Jackson's getting beat up. The thing about running quarterbacks is eventually they wear out. And maybe we're starting to see that with Lamar Jackson. And if it happens to the wide receiver corps where they don't have good depth as it is, I just have a bad feeling for the Baltimore Ravens this year. Anywho, final thought time, Joel.
Yeah, that's okay. Disagreement is good. Makes for a lot.
They're just going, we have the same picks.
Yeah, it makes for a lot easier than just, okay. Final thought is actually surprisingly germane to sports. I know that's a shocker for me, isn't it?
You, yeah.
But yes, we had a rather interessante fight between in baseball that made a little bit of news, and I just want to. I know you don't have the quote unquote dropping of the gloves like you do in hockey when it's called "Let's Duke It Out," but when Tim Anderson basically raised his fists to Jose Ramirez, that's basically what I would qualify as dropping the gloves. And the best part was you had the second base umpires like, exit me.
Nope.
Stage.
I'm going to be over here. Y'all have fun.
And then after dropping the gloves, the worst dropping of the gloves, probably of the year, unless somebody else can top this, then Ramirez proceeds to absolutely, with one punch absolutely deck living snot out of Tim Anderson, and he gone. I believe he also got Tim Anderson got 6 games, which is good because he instigated the entire thing.
Not to mention he's probably got a serious concussion anyways.
Yeah, so don't piss off Jose Ramirez. I think that's try not to hard tag the dude if he asks you to stop. Just sort of a general PSA as I conclude my surprisingly germane to sports final thought.
I am not going to stick with sports. Well, not really. Be careful when you're outside this time of year. The heat is a real problem as all of my screens go black. I just got an alert that we're under a heat advisory in my county for the next day. On Saturday, I had a disc golf tournament, 2 round disc golf tournament on Sunday.
Are you going to bring your own portable like Blizzard from like Siberia with you?
I wish I would have. But all of that being said, I had to withdraw because of the heat. I was so disoriented and dizzy and just sick by the end of the first round. I could not recover. So be careful when you're out there. It is very, very hot and it's very, very sticky and unlivable.
When they say it's triple figures, feels like the meteorologist ain't messing around.
No. So, just be careful out there. I'm trying to get my screens to come back on because I can't end the stream if I can't see where the button is. So, be careful out there.
Hashtag technology is fun.
Yeah, it's hot pretty much everywhere. Might have to find another way to back in and close this out because it is not wanting to come back for me today. So, just be careful. Be smart. Bring lots of water and
stay hydrated, kids.
Yeah, stay hydrated for sure. I am trying to get back in the back doorway to end it because technology is fun.
Hashtag tech support stream.
Yeah, it's fun. So there might be an echo here in a second if this actually does work. There it is. So,
Rapping Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, and Rapping Joel.
Yeah, trying to fix this so it's not as bad. It is kind of happening a little bit, but now I got to find a way to